Hello and welcome to Esther's Gardening Adventures. I'm Esther and we're only a few days away from Thanksgiving. And here in the US, one of the dishes that is very common to have in your Thanksgiving dinner is cranberry sauce. Now typically you would buy cranberry sauce in a can from the store, but this year I realized and learned that you can can your own cranberry sauce. And one of the reasons that cranberry sauce is so good in your Thanksgiving meal is when you're eating Thanksgiving dinner or lunch, whenever you do it, quite often it's quite heavy, quite fatty, and this helps the acidity and sweetness and tartness of cranberry sauce helps cut through that and give it some additional depth of flavor and give your taste buds a little bit of a break from the heavy turkey. So this is actually a really easy recipe to make. I think it's one of the easiest I've ever encountered, so I'm excited to show you. And this time I'm going to be doing something a little different. This is the first batch I made, and you can see I didn't add any pectin, which is like the thing you usually add for jams and jellies to make them thicker. I didn't add any, and it still has plenty of pectin in it, so that's great. With cranberries, you don't have to buy any extra ingredients other than sugar. And Aldi's was having cranberries on sale for $1 each, 99 cents per bag. And for this recipe, I'm doubling it. You can't double all recipes, but if it says you can double it, you can. So this takes 8 cups of cranberries, fresh cranberries, which is about 3 to 4 bags of these, depending on how good the cranberries are, because you have to pick through them. So I'd recommend getting 4 bags if you're doing this a double batch. 2 bags would take care of a single batch, but I'm doing a double batch because one batch got me like basically 1.5 of these. So I want to have at least 2 or 3 more to have for Thanksgiving this year and to have throughout the year going forward. So let's get started. One of the first things I do when I'm water bath canning is I get the oven started, the stovetop started for my water, because it'll take about a half an hour for the water to fully heat up, which is about the amount of time most recipes take to get ready, unless there's a lot of extra steps. Now, I did get this started a couple minutes ago, so I'm going to use a glove, but you can see, if you get close here, the water is about at that first line there, and that's about how full you need to make the canners for anything you're doing, because you want to make sure there's enough water in there for the jars to have at least 1 to 2 inches, preferably at least 2 inches above them to seal properly. Oh, and one other thing. This year, when I was visiting my brother out west, I came across this thing, and I'll put the name up here of what it's called. But basically, it's a sieve and a colander of sorts, and this goes in it to press it, and you basically can use it to make applesauce. And I was really excited when I found it at the store, because it's very rare you can find all 3 pieces together. Usually the base is missing, or this is missing, or just this is here. And I remember as a child watching my mom make applesauce using these. So it's real nostalgic for me, but it's also going to be used, we're basically going to use it to get all the seeds and flesh separated when we're going to be making this sauce. I'm also going to use an immersion blender to help smooth it out, because the first batch I made, well, it's really tasty and my husband loves it, and he's picky about his cranberry sauce. So while it's really tasty, I want it to be a little bit smoother than it is right now. Right now it still has a little bit of a texture, and I want it to be more jelly-like. So I'm going to try using an immersion blender once I have it all processed and see if we can help smooth it out a little. Oh, and by the way, I was at an Asian market the other day, and I found this apron, which I was so excited about, because it's like a plastic. But basically when I'm doing dishes or cleaning the kitchen at night, I tend to get water all over me. In case this fits on me nicely, and it'll keep me dry. It's not the most flattering for an apron, but I will be happy to not have water all over me, especially when I'm rinsing all these cranberries. Now I have so many cranberries, I bought 8 bags that I'm also planning on making a cranberry jalapeno jam. I bought some jalapenos, and in that case you do need pectin. And if I have any left over, I'm going to make some cranberry juice. But first, because I am canning, I'm going to pull my hair back because I don't want to get hairs into these canned goods. I'm going to rinse my hands. So I'm just going to put a whole bunch in, and I will need to look through them before I put them in a pot, because you want to pick out any cranberries that are like mushy. See, that's kind of mushy and soft. You don't want that. You don't want that. So you got to pick them out. I'm going to get a little bowl. Let's put that in. So get that. All right, oh, there's a bigger hole here. Maybe 3 bags will be enough for 8 cups. We'll see. See any immediately that are problematic? No. All right. Okay. Oh, I see it. That's it. All right, before I rinse these, I'm going to pick through. You want them really firm before you cook them. Wait, I saw a soft one. Where'd you go? Where'd you go? Then you want to get rid of it because it's not going to be good for your, you want the best fruit for your, this is actually a better batch than when I first got the first set. Now these cranberries cook down a lot, so this will probably make 2 to 4 of these when you have 8 cups of this. All right, let's go ahead and rinse them and I'll measure. All right, so we're gonna add 2 cups of water because we're doing a double batch. And it's 1, 2, and then we'll just put all the cranberries in. And basically we will leave this, I will watch it closely, and we'll wait till the cranberries have basically all softened up. And one way to know when the cranberries are softening up is when they start to pop, which you'll hear, and I'll try to get that on video if I can. So I'm gonna leave these. I'm gonna come back in about 5 minutes and check on them and see how they're going. This is doing good. Okay, it's not so hot that I can't move it back on the burner a little bit. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna set a timer for 5 minutes and come back and check on these. Okay, so it's only been 5 minutes and already you can sort of see some of the, like over here, see some of the juices coming out of the cranberry. They're already starting to soften up a little bit. Look, there's one over here that's already split. And yeah, they're gonna start splitting already. I can see a lot of them have started splitting. This will probably take about a half an hour to get it fully, everything split and ready to be put in the sieve. Maybe 20 minutes, depending on how fast your heater works, your stove works. All right, I'm gonna set another 5 to 10 minutes and we'll come back. Okay, so these cranberries I've been cooking for about 10 minutes and you can already tell how much they've gone down in size. They're mostly popped, not all of them yet. And I want them to be fully popped. So I'm gonna give them a stir, and this is when I don't walk away anymore. At this stage, if it's going, and I turned it down to 3, I had it at 6 before on my gas stove. I'm scraping the sides a little bit. I've never had it actually burn on the bottom, but you don't wanna risk it, right? And you can see why I'm doing a double batch. Look how much that boils down, right? Now I haven't added the sugar yet, but that doesn't happen until after you put it through the processor. Now, although I'm using this thing to make my sauce, you can also use a tomato processor or anything else that has a sieve like this. You could even use a potato ricer if you want. This is also the time when I'm going to be adding my jars to the water bath canner to sterilize them. And a tip for if you're making cranberry sauce is to get jars that go straight up and down. You don't want the ones that indent because you want to be able to have it pour out like a big log shape and be able to slice it just like you would jarred canned cranberry sauce you'd buy at the store. So make sure to use the ones that are the wide mouth jars. I've already washed them and I'm doing 3 of this size, 3 of the, I think these are half pint or pints. I'll have to look it up, but I'm doing 3 of these and 2 of the half pints, just as an overflow precaution. Oh yeah, it's starting to stick on the bottom. You gotta watch it. You gotta watch it closely. Right, I'm gonna turn it down even more to low while I'm doing this, since I cannot attend it. A nice tip I learned when I first started canning, I was watching videos, is when you're putting an empty jar in, put it in sideways with the canner thing so that it allows the water to fill up. Otherwise, you'll have a weird splash that could come back up and burn you. And I would be connecting this to the jars on the counter, except I'm filming it, so I'm doing it this way, but you should pick them up off the counter. See how that splashed? You don't want that. Okay. Now this is a good way to sterilize it. I usually just put them in as I'm heating up the water in this. And I try to make sure they're in here at least 5 to 10 minutes. 10 minutes is typically recommended. Put the lid back on. But for me, I basically just make sure it's fully boiling before I take the jars out so that I know they've gotten some time sterilizing. Okay, this cranberry sauce is getting really close. I'd say probably another 5 minutes of me stirring it. I want all of these to have broken. Now you can kind of force break them, kind of put them against the side, make them pop a little bit, but I like them to kind of break down on their own. I want to know they've cooked enough to pop. Okay, so I've got the cranberry sauce. I've got it on a hot pad here. You got to get a bowl. If you're using this kind of thing, you got to get a bowl that fits inside, and most of my bowls are too wide, but this is just about perfect. Okay, so now I'm just going to pour some of this in here. Not all of it at once, but a good amount of it. And you can put it all in at once if you want. You put it in, and you can already see some of the sauce going out, but even without me pushing it up against the sides, this is pushing some of it out. And then I just push it around. Good. I'll set you here for the moment. All right. Well, that's a good amount. That's probably what, 3 cups worth? It's not too surprising that that's what we got out of 8 cups. All right, now I'm just going to use an immersion blender to see if I can smooth this out a little bit more. Let me note here, this is an extra step I've added, but this is not part of the recipe. So if you want to follow the recipe, go straight from when you finish cooking the cranberries to putting it through the sieve and then adding the sugar. Now that's looking pretty good. I can still see some seeds. Let's see how smooth it is. That's better, but now I taste the seeds more. I wonder if there's a way to not have the seeds in there. All right, in my quest for perfection here, I'm going to do something kind of extreme. I have this little tiny one here that I know will get the seeds out. And I'm going to put the sauce through it. A little bit at a time. Okay. So this is about as much as I could get out putting it through. It took me about 15 minutes to put it through the sieve. This is, look how many seeds are in this. Some seeds may have escaped, but I think I got the majority of them. In the meantime, I got like cranberry stuff all over me. But that's okay. Okay, now let's add the sugar, which is 4 cups of sugar. That's a lot. So we need to stir in the sugar, and basically I need to bring it back up to a boil. Oh yeah. Other than the air bubbles, look how clear that is. That's gonna be delicious. So it's now at a boil, and I'm gonna set the timer for 3 minutes. And I'm just gonna keep stirring it that whole time. And if I have to turn down the temperature a little bit, if it's starting to boil over, you can see how it builds up with the foam. I don't want it to boil over, so if it starts getting too high, I will turn the temperature down a little bit. But the goal is to be, you want it to be boiling hard enough that you can't stir it down. And that's definitely where we're at now. So we're gonna let it do this, and actually, you know what? I'm gonna turn it down lower, and I'm going to, it'll continue to boil. I'm gonna get the jars out. I'm gonna try to multitask here without hurting myself. So you just tip it sideways, let the water come out, And any extra little drops that are left will evaporate, so you don't have to worry about that. And as soon as I get these jars out of here, I'm going to turn the temperature on this canner up so it's back to boiling level. It was boiling, but I turn it off usually to get the jars out. Okay, I have been neglecting my jam. I mean my sauce. So we've done our full 3 minutes. This is definitely done. I've turned off the heat. And I'm setting that on the plate over here. And then you want to set this in. And this is great because it's about a cup measurer. But I'm going to get it a little bit closer. So you want to leave a 1/2 inch head space, which is about a little bit above where the screw level begins. A little bit higher. So, oh, that's more like a 1/4. Let's go to this one. I think I'm just going to pour it in for the sake of expediency here. If I were dealing with a bigger batch, I wouldn't do that. Let's see. Oh, it needs a little bit more. It's about a 1 inch, tiny bit more. Whoa. Okay, actually that's probably about perfect. You'll notice here that I realized at some point that I don't have enough sauce to fill up this jar, and you really don't want to have a headspace too much more beyond what's recommended in the recipe. So I'm actually going to transfer this sauce to a smaller jar, and then I'm going to save any leftovers for dinner snacking. Yum, yum, yum. Now my phone had some sound issues, so I'm just doing a voiceover here. I moistened a paper towel with water, and I'm just wiping the rims. Some people use vinegar, and I have recommended using vinegar in the past, but I recently learned that vinegar actually can affect the seal because of its acidity level. So now I just use water to wipe the rims. And you want to wipe the rims clean, because if any food particles are left, it will reduce the ability of the lid to adhere fully to the jar and to seal. Next, you want to put the lids on, and then the rings. And when you tighten the rings, you want them to be what's called finger tight, which means just about as much torque as your fingers can give without having to use your wrist to add actual tightness to it. If you make it too tight, the lid could buckle, and that's been a bigger problem with newer lids these days, so definitely don't make it too tight. Once you've fully tightened these jars as much as needed, then you'll put them in the canner, and you want to let the water come to a full boil before you start your timer. You'll want it to boil at a full boil for 15 minutes before you take it out. Okay, so the alarm just went off. It's been 15 minutes, which means it's time to take the jars out. Now, when you're taking the lid off, always put it away from yourself so the steam doesn't come at you directly. And if you're going to set this on a flat counter, try to have something on top in between that and the surface to help not create a suction, but you can also just set the lid on your stove. I just get the jars out, put them on a towel to help absorb a little of the moisture. Don't worry about if some water stays on top of the jars. It will definitely evaporate. And the real trick here is you don't want to touch your jars at all for 24 hours. At least 12 hours before moving them, if you have to move them at all, because it can affect the seal. So right now, I don't know how well you can tell, but right now there is like a little bump. You can kind of tell on this one. There's a little bump that's popped out. And when they seal, as they cool off, that will pop in. And that's one of the ways you can tell it's sealed. Now tomorrow we'll come back and we will check the seals and we'll make sure everything's done and see how they did. But in the meantime, look, this is already setting up a gel. See how that's sticking together like that? And it'll become even more solid than that. So it's doing really good, and this is gonna be really good for dinner. Okay, it's the next day. It's about 3 o'clock, so it's a couple hours short of 24 hours after I finished the batch. But here they are, the jars. This one's from the old batch. You can see in comparison, the ones where I took the seeds out and went through that extra step in immersion are darker. Actually more like a dark cranberry color. Actually, closer probably to what you would get from when you're opening a can. Let's see. Okay, they all sound nice and tinny. And then let's open them up. Take the caps off. You always want to store jars without the rings on, and you always want to rinse them after you're done processing them, because there can be jam or other things, sugar or other things that's up around the top. So let's try. The lids are staying on, and they're tinny, so that means, and they're making the right sound when I click my fingernail on them, so they're good to go. All I need to do is rinse them now and label them and store them. All right, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving, and I'll see you next time.